wanted to get a sense from everybody of where we feel we all are at the moment. So if this is a kind of scale, and over here we have burnout, which I'll just talk about for a second, and over here we have sort of quality work that we feel really proud of. Now, when we say burnout, I do think it's worth just referencing. It's become a really common phrase, you know, like we might actually say it in a sort of day-to-day way. But when we think about burnout, I think there is, I mean, it's absolutely okay to be like, oh, I feel a bit burned out today or this week. But I think when we think about burnout that is significant, it is slightly different. So I was reminding myself this morning of how the World Health Organization define it. And if you've listened to Jen Moss on the podcast, she's really good on burnout. And what they say is that sort of significant burnout is when you've had sustained stress over time, and you get to the point where your energy is depleted. And what's interesting is your feelings then are actually not of stress. Your feelings are more of apathy. So you actually stop caring and you stop being connected to the work that you do. Now, you can obviously be burnt out in different parts of your life, but we're thinking about it from a work perspective. That's kind of what we're kind of thinking about. And so when I was reflecting on it as well, the other thing just to mention around burnout doesn't always come from sort of toxic cultures. It can do, obviously that can be an influencer of burnout. But actually the couple of times where I think I have been closest to that description of burnout have been when I have been in the job that I love doing the most. I don't think I got close to it actually when I was working for Sainsbury's or for Barclays, but actually in Amazing If, I can pinpoint a couple of moments where I was like, didn't last that long, but I definitely got to the point where if I could have hid under a duvet for a week, that's what I would have done. So unfortunately this morning, we don't know why, Sarah and I tried to fix it fast and we couldn't. The star annotation on the screen isn't working. So just maybe let me know if, let's make up a bit of a scale that might help us. If 10 is like, I'm always this at the moment, and if 0 is, okay, based on Sarah's description of that sort of sustained stress, I'm much more of a 0. If you don't mind sharing in chat, but you don't need to, you can just do it for yourself. Kind of, where are you? Where are you? So if I was doing this kind of right here and now, I would say I'm sort of an 8. 8, no, I'm quite high up on that scale. As I said, please don't worry, if you are feeling much lower, different week, different moment, I could have been much lower on that scale. So we've got quite a lot of people. We have got some people who are sort of more like 3s and 2s. That's hard. That's a hard place to stay for too long. We can definitely share some resources that kind of might be helpful on that. Becky, you're in the NHS. Yeah, really hope. That sounds really hard, Becky. So you were saying it's really hard, really full on. And sounds like you definitely kind of need a break. I hope we can help a bit. We're probably not the full answer. I would encourage you to listen to Jen Moss talking a bit about it, because she's done some really useful research, and then about what you can do, you know, like practically then what helps you. If it is useful, my own perspective on it, and I wasn't doing anywhere near as meaningful a work as people do in the NHS, was that you can't fix it fast. So you can't just go, oh, I'm just going to stop being burned out. You know, like I'll just tell myself that that's what's going to happen. I think it does take time. The other person who's quite interesting on this, for those of you who know the Pound Project, maybe bought Gremlins when we did a project with them. Emma Gannon's new book with the Pound Project is called A Year of Nothing, which, I mean, does sound like, as a title, it's a good title, right? Quite appealing. But Emma had a really big burnout, and that's why she wrote A Year of Nothing. And though the books have finished, you can't buy them now for a bit, she has written quite a lot of articles on it. So you could have a read of her work and sort of get a feel for some of the things that she reflected on. Again, sometimes it's just quite nice to know that you're not alone, and quite interesting to see how she responded to it. Okay, so we know where we are. 3 questions for you. Number 1. At the moment in your job, how do you measure success? Let me know in chat. Let's see what range we've got here. How do we measure success, or how do you measure success? So when you're thinking about, have I succeeded in the job that I do? What does that look like? So Victoria, that looks like deliverables delivered. Hard to say if you try and say it too fast. Feedback from your team. Yeah, results and feedback. Recognition, interesting. Meeting my deadlines. Yeah, hard to meet them. Have I achieved the things I want to? Completion, Kelly there. Yeah. Outputs. Interestingly, so let's come back to the difference between outputs and outcomes. Could be quite helpful to just think about. When I'm proud of the work that I produce, that point pride, we're going to come back to that. Answering the big business questions. Yeah. Adding value. Sense of fulfillment and pride. Great. So Cal would say, and we have definitely moved to this over the past few years and found it really useful, is that it's helpful to be outcome based. So you can be, I guess you could measure success in terms of tasks. So did I respond to all of the emails that I got today? That would be a sort of, did I get that stuff done? And you might get the small dopamine hits that we get from like responding fast. So that would be very, very short-termist. Outputs might be, did I write that presentation? Did I send that proposal? Did I do that? Did I deliver on that kind of piece of work that I needed to for my manager? Outcomes tend to be bigger. They tend to be slightly different to outputs. Outcomes tend to be you've delivered on something where you've sort of made the change. You can sort of see an outcome. It's a tangible thing. And I think outcomes are often a bit bigger. They help you to zoom out a bit more. So for example, an output would be write 5 chapters of a book. That's an output. An outcome would be sell 1 million copies of that book. Let's be ambitious based on what I'm spending my time doing this week. So you can start, when you start to have a play, it takes me a while to sometimes get my head around the difference between outputs and outcomes. But if you haven't spent time on that, that might be something to just think through a bit. Because when you are really clear on outcomes, it can just help you a bit with what matters most. Am I spending time in the right area? When I think about being productive, what am I being productive in service of? And so, yeah, that can be quite useful. Who uses, what is it, OKRs? You know, like objectives and key results. That's another way of doing it. Lots of tech companies use OKRs. And you can read about, particularly I think it's Google, who share very transparently how they write OKRs. Key results here would be the same as outcomes. It's just that it's a slightly different way of saying it. I think it's just making sure that when we think about what good looks like, we are sort of setting ourselves up to have a positive impact, because then we feel better about our work, but then we are doing the work that matters most to our company too. One of the points I really liked that Cal made, if you have listened to the podcast, he did talk about this idea of this is not a trade-off. So being kind of slowly productive, as he describes it, is not, oh, if we do this, our team or our company loses and we win. Oh, suddenly I've created all these boundaries and this space for myself, but it's at the cost of doing what my team or my company needs. And he sort of goes, well, I don't think that's useful. And I agree. I don't think that's useful too. I think this has got to work for us and work for the team and for the organization too. And that's where I think if you have clear outcomes, kind of everybody wins. Interesting, Steve. You've done an OKR workshop, people understanding what your goals were and why you're doing, rather than working in a vacuum. Yeah, that's interesting. OKRs, objectives and key results. So this idea of transparency and sharing as a team, we'll come back to that. Next one, how do you, in your team, how do you manage your work? So like, what does that, I don't want to say too much more on that. What does that look like? So how are you managing your work across your team? I'll say a bit about what we do. So you use Agile, Katie, and if you've not listened to Cal Newport yet, he actually does describe the managing work as a mini accessible version of Agile. So actually, you're probably already ahead of the game here. What else have we got? Using Trello boards, yeah, Monday.com and Asana. So here we're talking about how we use tech as well to manage work. Lots of emails and meetings, yeah, bit chaotic at the moment. Yeah, Sam, we'll come back to that. my reflection here was that we as a company, we're probably quite good at managing work individually and a bit less good at managing work across the team. Try to use Team Planner, but nobody keeps up with it. Yeah, so there's no point doing it unless everybody subscribes to it. Very disorganized spreadsheet, sorry. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say been there. I'm like, we kind of are there. There's always a spreadsheet. A queue of issues, Steve, interesting. You go through them roughly in priority order. That's kind of a good way to do that. So it feels transparent. Just Sam saying you just have a catch up with your manager. Yeah. Trello, work in progress meetings, days for projects, learning strategy. Okay, Andrea, so you're saying similar to Helen's week. So Helen talked about in her ideal week, she has a doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, more sort of delivery, like outward facing work. And we have Freedom Fridays, spreadsheets, check-in meetings. Yeah. So a couple of the ideas that stuck with me from Cal, one was this idea of, I'm just going to summarize it as what now and what next. So, this idea of kind of people add to your agenda of like what needs to happen and how do we manage that? And maybe what you end up then doing is becoming really responsive. So you split your attention. Good question, I think, to ask yourself, how many different directions am I splitting my attention in? So if you were like, oh, I've got 100% attention, let's say at work, is that going across 10 things, 15 things, or is that going across 2 or 3 things? And you sort of go, the more you split your attention, I think Cal's point is everything you sort of say yes to, everything you agree to has a load of stuff around it. He talks about it as like the sort of administrative overload. And I was reflecting recently on one of the things that I think I need to try doing differently is I sometimes say yes to things that I think are quite quick. I think, oh, that's quite a quick yes. I'm really happy to do that. Like, sure, like why not? And actually what I'm good at, I say no to big things. So if it's a big thing that I can already anticipate is going to have administrative overload, I find that really easy to say no to. But it's the smaller things, and I underestimate the admin that comes with them. So I was thinking about this. I was like, let me give you a practical example. So I said yes to doing a podcast for somebody else on part-time working. And I was like, great, like I really support the company. I love TimeWise. We've been doing work in that area. And they just said, oh, do you mind talking a bit about when you work part-time and what that looked like for you? And I thought, of course not. And I'm really passionate about people being able to work part-time. Felt like a quick and easy yes. I'll turn up and have a chat. And great. And I've got podcast equipment. Obviously, it's really easy for me to do. Then let's just talk through what actually happens for that. Firstly, the person making that podcast wants to call me to talk through the questions they're going to ask. And you're like, oh, okay. So now I've got an extra meeting that I hadn't anticipated. Sarah in our team has to find the time to make that podcast happen. Oh, there's another person who's going to be in the same interview. So it has to be coordinated with their diaries too. And you're getting emails and they probably say, oh, can we also have like a headshot for you and all these kind of different things. What I felt like was a quick yes, and it was quick for me to say yes to, still has a load of work around it. Not loads and loads of work. Of course, these things are doable, but if you start to really challenge yourself on the work around the work, I think it helps you to say no to more, depending on how good you are at saying no generally. I think I'm good at saying no at the big stuff. I'm not quite so good at saying no for the small stuff. So I just found that really interesting. And then the other reflection I had was this idea of individual versus team. So some of you, I think, will be a lot better at this, I think, than we are. But individually across our team, do I trust that people have their own systems to manage work? Yes, because we get stuff done and I see those outcomes. But do we have a kind of a system together? No. And I think, that's because we're small and we've grown organically and everyone just sort of gets on with it. And it always feels hard, right? It feels hard to make the time, ironically, to do something that will probably save you time and mean that you spend your time better. So this idea of kind of a work management system, which I always think sounds very lofty, but it is this idea of going, we are transparent about what we are doing now and what we are doing next. And does that help us to save time? So I thought that was interesting. Next one, and this is that point on pride. Let me know in chat. something that you finished this year that you feel proud of. Something you finished at work. I'm going to keep everybody in work mode today. Something you've finished at work that you feel proud of. So you've got to an outcome in an ideal world. Yeah, you're right, Sean. Quick questions don't always have quick answers. Chapter for an academic book. Brilliant. Push the organisation to sign up for a professional development network. Great. That sounds amazing, Maria. That gives opportunities to hundreds of staff. Finish a toolkit for future camp leaders. Brilliant. Helps them prepare for the summer. Developed learning for 45,000 people to learn interview skills. Kerry, that's incredibly impressive. Great outcome as well. Getting strategy approved by the board. Caroline, brilliant. Half the team response time to customers, great, very outcome based there, very, very measurable, which makes life a little bit easier to see those outcomes. Massive research project completed with actionable recommendations, Kat, great. Developed a department-wide process to track all, I like your in brackets done, well, most of the work on Kanban boards, brilliant. Funding confirmed, great, Zoe. I often think when you start to reflect on the things you feel proud of, and I was doing this morning, I was like, okay, what do I feel proud of kind of finishing? That, well, you know, that thing about finishing, you've got to the outcome this year. I don't think it's a long list. Now, maybe you're better at me of getting to a longer list, but I'd actually only got 2 or 3 things where I was like, these are the big things that I have finished that feel like I've really completed something that I feel really proud of, that I feel have been sort of good quality work for me and good quality work for the company. And so I think it's sort of remembering sometimes, you know, kind of that cutting through with clarity. You could anticipate this, like, well, what do I want to be proud of? So, well, what do I want to be proud of by the end of this year? Am I then focusing on those things in the right way? There'll always be loads of stuff. And, you know, we're always trying to get smarter about how we kind of manage that stuff. But there will probably be only a couple of those kind of standout things. And so I like that idea of not only reflecting on what we feel proud of so far, but also visualizing what do we want to feel proud of. And I find that useful because I'm quite a future focused person, because then you can do that bit of mental time travel. What do I want to feel proud of? So therefore, what does that mean that I need to do now? Interesting. Yeah. Is burnout related to low pride? Yeah, because I think it would be. I don't know whether they use the word pride when I was looking at the description this morning. I'll put an article into chat at the end. But what they were saying was your care and connection to work definitely goes down. It's quite hard to feel proud of something if you don't feel connected to it. One thing I wanted to mention that listening to Cal this morning that I thought might be useful if you missed it in a previous podcast was this idea of speed versus space. So when we think about kind of pace and that idea of like slow productivity, you know, often feels like a bit of a contradiction, but essentially what kind of Cal is saying, we can't go at the same speed and we can't go a million miles an hour kind of all of the time. And one of the things that I found really useful is this idea of visualizing speed and space. And you can do that in a few different timeframes. You can do day, week, month, and you can kind of do it over a quarter. Where have you got your speed versus space right? And where doesn't it work for you? So the way to sort of visualize this, if you didn't hear us talk about it on the podcast previously, is speed. You just use a line like this. So that's speed. There we go. And space are just circles. So it's just you kind of creating some data. And so recently, Helen and I had a bit of an aha moment because we were like, okay, as Helen described on the podcast, we've set up our weeks in the right way. You know, surely we've really thought about this. But what we started to realize is our weeks look like this. So let's just do, if this was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if I was just doing a mark for each day, we'd done this. We'd gone, oh, this will work. We'll be really fast all week. We'll sort of be a kind of really speedy week. Oh, but it's okay because we have a Freedom Friday. Let me know in chat, how do you think we were feeling on those Fridays? So we're like, oh, I've got a Freedom Friday. On paper, brilliant. But how do you think we were feeling on Fridays? Exactly. So this is a problem, right? Because on Freedom Fridays, we'd still got work that mattered to us, but it was a different kind of work. but we were both getting to Fridays and I was just like, I'm just tired. I'm just really, really tired. And I felt like I was recovering. I was like, I'm using Friday as like a recovery day, but I'm not actually doing any quality work. And actually some of our most important kind of quality projects, that's when some of that work happens. And so we were like, right, what the problem is actually, you've got to then go, for us, we had to go back up a level and go, okay, so a Monday needs to look not sort of like this with like maybe that if you're kind of lucky. Actually, what we've got to do every day is think about punctuating our days with small moments of space so that actually we get to a Friday with energy and enthusiasm. And so it's just quite, I find this quite helpful to kind of ladder up and ladder down, because if I look at my quarter one, again, it feels good. We do have a certain level of seasonality in what we do across. If I looked at it annually, it looks good. If I look at it quarterly, it looks good. If I look at it weekly, I spot where actually it's not quite working. So if you've not had a go at this, I find it fascinating. I think you just get a very quick view of, are you sort of being productive in a way that equals quality outcomes? And this helped us really kind of spot something and think a little bit differently about how we design our days. And you're always a work in progress. But yeah, Lucy's saying, yeah, working 4 days across 5. And it's a really good explanation of why that works. Yeah. Sometimes I think also if you do work kind of different working patterns, this can also explain why it doesn't work. So, you know, often that, well, I'm paid to work 3 days, but I essentially work 5 days in 3. And you're like, well, that doesn't work either. Like my, so a few of my friends do that and they're going, we're not quite sure this works. Essentially, you know, you are sort of doing the equivalent of what Helen and I've just described kind of for the week. Yeah, that was your issue when you worked for 4 days, Kat. Interestingly, I worked 4 days and actually it worked brilliantly, but I had such a kind of I was paid for 4 days and I worked 4 days. It worked really well. So it's an interesting challenge. And I remember Helen coming back from maternity leave, working part-time, and it was an absolute car crash because it was just speed, with like 0 space ever. I think she tried to do probably 5 days worth of meetings in like 3 days. I worked 5 days in 4 and absolutely love it. Yeah, Emma, really interesting. So if quality control is our sort of priority here, so we're going, right, what is most important is to do quality work that we feel proud of, that's useful for our organisation. So we have a positive impact. We all want to have a positive impact. We all want to continue to get better and to grow. That feels motivating. What else helps us with quality control? Let me know. What else helps us with quality control? What else can we do? So there's something about speed and space. There's definitely something about how we measure success, how we manage work. Anything else that you think that's really helpful for me to make sure essentially I do what matters most and I stay motivated, I've got good momentum, and I can continue to sort of be even better than I was before? So the question I was sort of trying to ask myself. Joe, slowing down, building a reflection time, checking in. Yeah, really nice. We think, I say this, we think, because we change our minds quite a lot at the moment. We think part 1 of our new book is going to be called Learn as You Go, which is a good description there of what Joe's just said. So learn as you go. Limiting hours worked, not creeping into social time. Yeah, that's interesting. Quality control. If you listen to, it's an old episode now, but Martha Lane Fox, who is brilliant, she talks about that. She says the way she maintains quality in the work that she does, she founded lastminute.com, she's on the board of Chanel, very interesting different things. She says her world outside of work helps with her quality control. Regular time to do planning. Yeah. What else have we got? Worked out. Meaningful work means, yeah. So Kerry's saying, know what meaningful work means. Like have that kind of definition, make it visible, make it unmissable. I was also thinking about, what I got on my list? Critical friends. So, you know that the risk, I guess, with quality control is not to mark your own homework. You know, that thing of like, well, what is quality? But I've got a couple of people whose opinion I really trust to sort of tell me. Like I always think, if I want something to be even better than it's been before, who's going to tell me the truth? You know, those kind of feedback friends who are going to tell you the truth because they really want you to sort of go even further. You know, they really want you to succeed. So they will tell you if something isn't as good as it could be, or if something doesn't work. So I was like, oh, critical friends, I think, are helpful. As we said, how do you get kind of fast feedback? So make sure you don't go in the wrong direction. Make sure, what Steve's saying, 3 pillars of project management: quality, cost, and schedule. And if you have a problem, one of those needs to slip. Yeah, that's interesting. So you could, I always quite like applying things from other areas to like career development stuff. You could apply those 3, I think, to career development stuff. Lindsay works in research funding, critical friend for others. Yeah, you kind of get fast feedback. And I think that last point is going, what does that better than before? What would that look like? I think really working hard to almost be a bit forensic about, well, how will I know? Like, you know, asking yourself that open question, how will I know that this is better than before? Well, is it how much pride I feel? It could be about feelings. It could be the feedback that I get. Is it the impact that it has? When we say better, we all want to get better and we all want to grow. What does that look like for you? And also kind of knowing that that's not always a straight line.